Dreamhack is a world-famous gaming festival with conventions in Atlanta,
Hey, yo, my life's like a movie, my eyes are like a Uzi, jacuzzi. Get the out of the way!
Stockholm, and as of last month, Birmingham. I was invited to Dreamhack's first UK convention as a creator, which I jumped at the chance to accept. So my partner Boudica and I packed our bags and got ready to go to the shining beacon of a city that is Birmingham.
I just woke up in a steaming mood, yeah? Because I live in a hole! Do you know what I mean? Birmingham is a
In the run-up to the convention, Jujutsu Kaisen and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure both got new episodes, or one got one episode, and I decided it was the perfect time for me to bust out my old Joseph Joestar cosplay and finally cosplay Yuta from JJK, who'd been collecting dust on my Cosblan shelf for quite some time. But that wasn't all. When I arrived, it became immediately clear that the Arnold Sports Festival was also happening over the entire weekend at the same time as both Dreamhack and Megacon. I don't know if whoever organised this was inspired by the Sendai Colony episode of Jujutsu Kaisen that came out the day before the weekend and wanted to create their own three-way domain clash of cosplayers, gamers, and bodybuilders, but this was a terrible decision for reasons that will become very, very clear later on. Boudica and I only attended the Saturday and Sunday of the convention because we had booked to see the Hunger Games on stage on the Friday of the con, which might not have been the best use of our time, but that's a separate matter. But
it's like she's not even here.
We gotta go, Mom!
Mom! Raping! Going now!
on the morning of the Saturday, I put on my crop top and locked in on the arduous process that is doing JoJo's makeup. Inevitably, we left a little bit late, but we were both really excited to see what Dreamhack had to offer, as well as the NEC itself, because neither of us had ever been. We usually only just go to London conventions. When we arrived, we picked up our passes and waited around a little bit because there were huge crowds next to both entrances for Dreamhack, which weren't very clearly labelled at all, but that wasn't too much of an issue for us. After a little while, we went in and we were really impressed by the scale of the convention. The gaps between the stalls were nice and wide, so there was basically no problem getting anywhere. The lights were at a good level, they were fairly flattering for photos and weren't too overwhelming, and the signage everywhere was very clear. We consulted the map to see where the artist alley was, and this is where we ran into our first genuine issue of the convention. The space allocated on the map for the artist alley was absolutely tiny, and then when we went to confirm our suspicions,
I see Funkos aplenty.
Funkos aplenty. The artist alley was the smallest I have ever seen at a convention. It was only about 5 or 6 tables. This is frankly unacceptable, and considering how huge Dreamhack is and the money I know they definitely have the budget to get an artist alley area larger than this. Especially as I've seen bigger artist alleys at single-day conventions like Animanga Pop London. Now I know that Dreamhack is primarily a gaming or cosplay convention, but a main part of keeping a convention like Dreamhack interesting is having a variety of things to do and a variety of opportunities for exhibitors and sellers. And if you don't have that, then you're not going to be able to compete with the giants that are Megacon Live or MCM in the UK. This theme sadly continued into the panels and general content of the convention, as when I looked at the schedule, there wasn't really any content to do with cosplay. And this wouldn't necessarily be a problem, but Dreamhack is heavily marketed as a cosplay convention as well as a gaming one. They have an £8,000 prize pool for the cosplay competition on Sunday, they have a dedicated cosplay lounge, they have signs everywhere emphasizing that cosplay is not consent. And these are all great, these are all brilliant. But if you're going to try and attract such a large audience and invite people as cosplay guests, you need to then have the programming to back it up. And they simply just didn't have that. And this was less of a problem, but another serious issue I had with Dreamhack was the absolute state that the men's toilets were in. Every time I went in, it felt like there was more and more pee on the seats and floors, and there were at least 3 soap dispensers that weren't working, at least 3 doors that had no locks on. It wasn't that the locks were jammed or anything, there was just no lock there. And this could well be an NEC problem, but it was strange how when I went to Megacon on the Saturday, which Boudica and I also went to, it was strange how their toilets had 0 issues whatsoever and were completely clean. But now that I'm done with all of the bad stuff, I genuinely did really enjoy Dreamhack. I thought all of their programming was pretty great and was really high quality. And when I walked around, all of the stalls were probably some of the highest quality that I've seen from a convention ever. and they had a variety of different gaming sections that we could have fun at. So we played air hockey at a mini arcade for a bit, and the only strange thing about that was that the air hockey machines were not turned on, so there was no air blowing out. But regardless of that, we still have fun. And then after a little while, I went to the Creator Lounge, because that's another thing that's included with the Creator Pass. And when I went in, I was immediately impressed by the 2 layers of security, as there hadn't been any security so far, and it did make me feel very safe in there. And when I went in, it was like breathing in a breeze of fresh air. The air conditioning in there was so good. The lights were the perfect level. They weren't too bright, they weren't too dark. The seats were so comfortable. They had free snacks, they had free drinks. My only complaint was that they did eventually run out of hot water. So maybe they could have put a kettle in, I don't know. I understand why they didn't, to not cause electrical fires, but still. But that was the only downside. It was the perfect oasis for creators to go to, and it was basically anything that you would ever want from a space designed for the purpose of a creator lounge.
You say in your video that we left to go to the other convention.
They don't need to know that.
Dreamhack or the audience?
No comment. After this, we went to Megacon on the Saturday just to compare, and immediately it felt like there was more of a sense of community. Rudica, how do you feel right now?
Joyous.
Joyous. At the convention, and there were a lot more cosplayers and artists, and obviously the artist alley in the vendor section was at least like 10 times bigger than that at Dreamhack. It was a significant improvement. But I will say it did feel a lot more crowded, the temperature was a lot higher, and a lot of the interactive opportunities at Megacon were a lot lower than those of Dreamhack. And then after lunch, we went to the JoJo's fan meet, which as per usual was brilliant.
Where are the gays? Over here? No, the really cartoony gays. Yoo-hoo!
I try to go at every convention I go to where they are. It was amazing, got to catch up with some friends. So much fun, although the NEC staff did try and move us, which wasn't great, because the space was double booked, I think with the Arnold, but that was an NEC thing, which I will get to later. In general, I did get the feeling that Megacon just was a safer space for cosplayers, and when cosplay is already such a vulnerable and unfairly frowned upon hobby, having a safe space to facilitate that is really important. And from the fan meetups to the cosplay programming, I just felt a lot safer at Megacon as a cosplayer specifically. After that, we went to Dreamhack for a bit, and we caught the Meet the Judges panel for the cosplay competition the next day, and we also registered and checked out the cosplay lounge because it was quieter towards the end of the day. And I was really glad that you had to register for this, especially because I imagine a lot of people would just use it as like an area of rest, which is fine, but it was really nice to have a dedicated space for cosplayers. As even at other bigger UK conventions like MTM or Megacon, there is rarely dedicated spaces for cosplayers to relax. I mean, there's cosplay repair stations, but usually it just consists of changing rooms and a desk. And this cosplay lounge, oh my god, it was on the same level as the Creator Lounge. It was its own kind of walled off space, so the lights were the same as Dreamhack, but the lighting in Dreamhack was great anyway, so that wasn't a problem. There were changing rooms, there was a cosplay repair station, there were bins and mirrors everywhere, so, you know, no waste. There were chairs, the chairs were really comfy, and they had a whole sewing machine at the cosplay repair center. That is insane. I've never seen that at a convention before. Amazing. Everyone needs to take notes. And when I went in, it did just really feel like Dreamhack did genuinely care about the cosplay community themselves and were trying to facilitate for them, but I think they just need to improve on a couple of things before there's, you know, a genuine feeling of appreciation. But they definitely have the potential to do that, because this cosplay lounge, I will tell you, is a step in the right direction. This was potentially my favorite inclusion of the weekend, other than maybe the Creator Lounge or the Quests, which I will get to later. Then I went to the Meet the Judges panel that I mentioned, and that was really interesting. It was nice to have like a judge introduction for people who were into that, because at other conventions I've never seen a Meet the Judges panel before, so that was nice. The only issues I had with that were that the panel started 15 minutes late and the microphones were a little bit buggy, but there were several reasons for why that could have happened, so I'm not holding that against Dreamhack. That was, you know, I'm nitpicking here. But the panel was really interesting. It was nice to see the different areas of expertise that the judges had in a little bit more detail. And yeah, it was really informative and fun, and it honestly just made me sad that Dreamhack didn't have more programming like this, because they clearly have the potential, but they haven't actually executed it that well, in my opinion. After that, we went home. We were absolutely shattered, but we were ready for the next day, where we were planning on staying at Dreamhack for the entire day and taking full advantage of what they had on offer in terms of gaming, in terms of their interactive stuff, and we were going to give it our all. And so I got up, got ready a lot quicker this time. I was dressed as Yuta from Jujutsu Kaisen, as I mentioned, and Boudica was not in cosplay, which is a first for them. But we were a little bit later into the day because Dreamhack runs way later, and we prepared to start the quests that Dreamhack had on offer. And immediately, this was way better than anything similar that I've seen, because MCM has these things that you can do on the app with the QR codes and you can enter giveaways and stuff, but the MCM app isn't the best designed, and the Dreamhack app, admittedly, it's not the best designed either, but it was a lot more user-friendly, and it felt like there was a genuine interactive element to it, which I think is really important, especially as it is a gaming convention. And we went and we got this nice card that we could stick to our lanyards, and we got a fun badge that we could also click onto that, and it genuinely did make you feel immersed. We went around the entire day scanning QR codes, and it was actually really fun. And I think that's another thing that Dreamhack has the leg up on other UK conventions, is their interactive elements in terms of the entire convention, whether it be gaming setups or quests or things like the robots walking around. It was all just so much fun, and I wish that other conventions gave those sides of the cons more time of day and considered it a little bit more. One thing that I did notice on the second day was that there were a lot more people, but the queues outside weren't that big, so I was really confused about where they were all going. But we will get to that later. And we went around, we played a few games, we played 2XKO for a bit, we played Fortnite, we played this arcade game, which was quite stressful, but it was really fun. When we sat down to have lunch, we ended up accidentally watching an entire D&D one-shot hosted by Tommy Gofton with Mela Lee, Jason Spizak, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Carolina Ravassa, and Justine Huxley, which was surprisingly amazing. It was really, really fun. And I haven't played or seen D&D before. It's been something I've been interested in, but just have never found the time to engage with. And it was really cool seeing a different side of the general sort of nerd world getting representation and getting time on the main stage to really like show that hobby off. And it was really cool to see the variety of voice actors that they had invited as well, because that was really fun. Boudica got a metal dice from Jason Spizak. Yeah, it was great. It was so much fun. And then after that, we looked around a little bit more. We played this flight simulator game, which was actually really difficult. It made me feel kind of nauseous, but I'm not going to hold that against the game. That was probably on me. And then we figured out why there were so many people. We caught the end of the F1 Sim Racing World Championship and various COD finals in a wing of Dreamhack that we didn't even know existed. But oh my gosh, it was like there was an entire convention's worth of people specifically in that area. It was insane. But we didn't have time to stick around for that, and we went for the main event, which was the Cosplay Championship. Now, I was instantly impressed by the fact that they gave us light-up wristbands, which I have never seen a convention do. MCM needs to take notes because they have a huge cosplay contest and they have nothing of the sort. And then the hosts came out and they were great. One of them was at the Meet the Judges panel the previous day, and they were great. They bounced off each other so well. They were really funny. They clearly were passionate about cosplay and knew what they were talking about, which is very important. And then the judges were ushered out. As I said before, the judges were all great. They all had a good variety of skills in terms of cosplay. So, you know, it felt like they would judge fairly, and they all had various different opinions. Their costumes were great, of course. And then we got on to the main event, which I was really happy with. I had one complaint. So they had this graphic, right, with the character name, a photo of the character, and the name of the cosplayer. It would have been nice if they had had the name of the property that the character was from, just because that was sometimes a little bit confusing. But it was good because at a lot of conventions, a big issue is name mispronunciation, and that never happened, to my knowledge, at Dreamhack. And even if it did, it was easy to then read the graphic that they had on screen and see the correct name. And especially for harder to pronounce usernames, for example, or character names, really great. Great idea. I love that. And they also had a cameraman on the left side of the stage with a camera that the cosplayers could interact with if they wanted to, which was really fun. I love it when cosplayers do that at competitions. That's one thing that I did notice, is that Dreamhack were really great when it came to graphics. So for example, when I got invited to be a creator, they sent me a load of different Photoshop templates to announce that I'm a creator, and very clear instructions on how to, you know, use it and make my own post, and just little things like that. It felt like they had a really phenomenal attention to detail. And throughout the competition, it was professionally run. There was very clear explanations of the different categories. When the cosplayers were walking on, there weren't really any issues. The hosts were brilliant. The judges were brilliant. It just felt really professional, and honestly, I think it felt like the most professionally run cosplay contest I have ever been to. And I have been to several conventions with cosplay contests. I've been to most of the UK ones, I've been to one in Canada, and genuinely, this one felt the smoothest, it felt the sharpest, felt the most professional. It was great. And that continued even up until the show was over. So when people were coming out and winning prizes, it didn't feel like people were, you know, missing out. It didn't feel like there was a gap in terms of respect from the different tiers. It was brilliant. I really enjoyed it, and I wish more cosplay contests ran as smoothly as this one did. Also, it should go without saying, but the cosplay competition side of cosplay is a part of the cosplay community, and anyone that says otherwise is quite frankly just being a bit of an idiot. Because not only is it great fun to watch, it's great fun to participate in, and it's literally how cosplay is recognized on an international scale professionally. How much more in the community can you get than that? Now, as I mentioned, I have been to several other conventions, and I think Dreamhack definitely has the potential to be up there in the big leagues with MCM, but I do think it needed to improve on a couple of things. For starters, as I said, I think it needs to have a little bit more cosplay programming and specific areas for cosplay, such as workshops, or more panels, or just booths, literally anything. Just chuck in like more of a vendors section, because then you can get people selling wigs and cosplay props and even more gaming related stuff. Like there was a booth with custom Xbox controllers. That was really fun. Why not more of that? They have the room. They had loads of room with loads of wide hallways. And that was great. That was great for having no congestion, because that is something that is a big problem at cons like MCM. But they definitely had the money and the room to expand the artist and vendor section, and it was just disappointing that they didn't do that. It also would have been nice if they had a little bit more security, for reasons that I will touch on in a moment, but there wasn't a bag check. There was a layer of security checking your badge when you went in, but that's kind of the bare minimum. And I know it's a faff in the morning to have to get your weapon checked and to have your bag searched at cons like MCM, but it does make me feel a lot safer when things like that are taking place, rather than at a chaotic venue like the NEC, where there are 3 conventions happening at the same time and there's no bag check for, to my knowledge, any of them. I wasn't at the Arnold, but at Megacon there was also no bag check. And this links to another problem which was prevalent for the entire weekend, very sadly, which was people being harassed and filmed unconsensually at the NEC. Now, a lot of the victims of this were cosplayers who attended Megacon, and this varied from people photobombing others, people just harassing people, people recording people without consent on meta glasses, on phones, on cameras, streaming people without consent, and this is just not on. And meta glasses are banned at Megacon and MCM, but I didn't see any enforcement from Megacon security to try and remove those from the convention. And admittedly, I didn't see any meta glasses in Megacon itself, so they could have been doing a good job in there. And I know that the NEC security is different from the Megacon security, but it does just feel like there wasn't really much actual enforcement of that rule, because if there's going to be no meta glasses at Megacon, what good is it if you're allowed to bring them throughout the lobby of the convention where most people are going to be? I feel like there needs to be clearer rules on that, and especially in terms of Dreamhack, with a convention where there are signs talking about consent and cosplay everywhere, those just feel shallow when meta glasses are not banned. There are multiple attendees from Dreamhack harassing people. It doesn't exactly help to create a friendly environment where cosplayers feel welcomed. And it's a shame, because a lot of the things that Dreamhack had on offer were brilliant for cosplayers, like the Cosplay Lounge and the excellently run cosplay competition and all of the amazing cosplay panels. It just kind of takes away from all of that when the community you were invited to represent is being harassed by the attendees that you are facilitating. And I think a lot of this could be prevented from more bag check, whether that be at the NEC itself or at the conventions, or both. And obviously I can't speak for the Arnold, but it's just common sense. Do not host a bodybuilding festival, a gaming convention, and an anime-based convention on the same day. That's just going to be a logistical nightmare, whether it be hosting fan meetups, people just being rude to one another, people being confused, and just generally having slightly looser security because of the chaos of the three events happening at the same time. I think people need to be more supportive in those spaces to everyone, regardless of what your hobby is. It's just a bad idea, and I don't know who signed off on that, but I would really not do that again. And it's manageable if there's two conventions happening at the same time. I've seen it happen in the XL in London. Now, to help with this, I think that Dreamhack should have generally more cosplay specific security, or just security focused on making their attendees feel safer and actually be more educated on how their behavior can harm others. So having more of a variety of signs about, having a scanner at the door, a bag check, whatever it may be, and just having more panels maybe to be more informed on cosplay as a hobby, and then maybe, changing those people's minds who would be inclined to harass cosplayers, and just generally making cosplayers attending the convention feel better represented, I think would really help the convention as a whole. And they might need another stage for this, and it also would have been nice to have air in the air hockey tables, but that's its own thing. But they might need another stage for this, they might need to expand the halls a little bit, but they definitely have the room for it, they definitely have the money for it. And it's a shame, because I didn't want to end my review on a sour note like this, but when an incident like this is reflecting poorly on the community of people at the convention I was invited to, this is going to then reflect poorly on the convention itself, and that's sadly unavoidable. As I said, I did really enjoy Dreamhack as a whole. I think that Dreamhack's programming overall was phenomenal. They had such high quality booths. Everything that was out there was amazing quality. I didn't see any AI art, Megacon, but there was no AI stuff anywhere as far as I could see. All of their panels were brilliant. All of their things that they were hosting, whether it be the F1 Championship, the D&D one-shot, the Cosplay Contest, it was all great quality. The food was even great quality. It was slightly more reasonably priced than at Megacon as well. And they clearly have the facilities to facilitate amazing things. Like when I went into that COD championship, oh my god, there were so many people, but it looked really high quality. They had loads of seating. It was accessible. The app was brilliant. They had loads of interactive elements. It was such a fun weekend. I think there's just little things that they could do to just make everyone feel safer. I mean, a big thing is not booking the weekend that Megacon and the Arnold are happening, but you know, there are various reasons for why that might have happened. I think that Dreamhack genuinely has the potential to compete with MCM and Megacon, and I had loads of fun over the weekend, and I think more people should go, and I will be going next year. But there are steps that they need to take in order to make the cosplay community in particular feel safer at that convention. Because it's all well and good having a cosplay lounge and signs everywhere, but if you're not actually going to enforce anything to make any change, then all of that just feels shallow and meaningless. Thank you for watching. If you would like to directly support the channel, I would really appreciate any form of interaction with the video, whether that be liking, sending it to a friend, commenting, subscribing even. But yeah, thank you for watching and goodbye.